You unlock this benefit with the key of Patreon. Beyond is another dimension. A dimension of thought. A dimension of speculation. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both waffle and substance. Of things and ideas. You've just crossed into the podcast zone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Trekking Through the Twilight Zone. This is Julian and I working our way through all of those Twilight Zone episodes. And today we're going to be talking about Robo Baseball Player, the mighty Casey on the Hoboken Zephyrs.
Yes.
A washed-up baseball team are allowed to work their way up through the league when they introduce Casey, who just so happens to be a robot pitcher who looks like a human, but it all goes to pot when he is given a heart. What are your thoughts on this episode, Julian?
Yeah, this is not a great episode. I want it to be. There's a version of this episode that is really good, right? The heart thing, look, this is a silly idea. It thinks it's more comedically successful than it really is. We got to hide the robot ball player from the league. The heart thing is I guess it's one way to go with this plot. It's certainly not the way I would go. It's very Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Yeah. You say Wizard of Oz. This made me think of those sort of like 60s and 70s Disney films that like Kurt Russell did, sort of like it's that idea. I can imagine them taking this concept of a robot baseball player and having sort of like comedy shenanigans, having to hide it from the league that he's actually a robot and all these different things, different comedy scenarios. You're right. It thinks it's funnier than it is. And again, what I would say is we are almost almost 60 years away from this episode, and humor changes and that sort of thing. It's jovially light-hearted, and I appreciate some of that, which works. However, as you say, I absolutely hate the ending.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the ending is just he gets a heart and he can't bear to strike out to hurt these careers, again, as if the heart is really the seat of emotions. But okay, it's a silly episode. But then the real ending is I'm going to move the team, but somehow the league isn't going to know that I'm the same guy, and I'm just going to play an all-android baseball team, which is, again, it's a twist. It's a way you can go, I guess. It's a thing you can do.
I like the way that they suggest, though, that these massively sophisticated robots, with or without heart, doesn't matter, but these massively sophisticated robots were built by a baseball coach and a manager.
Yes. Well, I mean, there is that one guy who comes and, has the robot. I assume he's sort of some sort of scientist.
He is, but he sort of suggests that he's going off. He sort of says, well, I'll leave the blueprints here, as a memento.
Right. Yeah.
So he's leaving them like the instructions. But I don't think this is like a Billy bookcase from IKEA. This isn't like, you bolt it together. Like,
well, this was actually this first draft of the script for Moneyball 2. We're going to change the game. They changed the game yet again. Moneyball 2.
It's going to be a crossover with Short Circuit. That's what it's going to
be. Yeah, Brad Pitt stumbles upon the plans for Five Alive.
Or even, like, say, a robotic baseball player from the future comes back to bring down the league. It just
come with me if you want to win the pennant.
Yeah. The thing with this is it also it leans into all these sort of comedy sports tropes, sort of like the beleaguered coach, and he's probably my favorite character. Like, he's good in it. Like, to me, I actually kind of enjoy him. He's a good presence. The grumpy sort of coach is a massive cliche, but again, how much of a cliche was it in 1960. But yeah, it's sort of it's like that Misfits, isn't it? Like, you know, this idea of the Misfits do good, but it's not. You know, this is where that cliche comes from. You know, again, you think of like Mighty Ducks or The Replacements, or you know, all these ideas of like a team of misfits come together to do well. No, in this case, they don't. They just hire in a robot, and it's sort of it doesn't have that same. You know, they don't. Although they do sort of have a moment of like getting behind him when they think he's out of the game, sort of thing, which is interesting. But yeah, again, like this is one of those ones where it runs past at a pace, you know, 22, 23 minutes. There's a lot in this, and so it feels
it's not
like
boring.
No, not at all.
You know, it holds the attention.
Yeah, I agree. It does. It fully holds my attention. It just feels a bit too crammed. Like again, if you let this breathe, this would be. I can imagine. I totally agree. This would be a pitch for a film at some point. On Disney Plus probably now, but
yeah, I'm biting my tongue. Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, look, I mean, especially I get it, the reference to Casey at the bat, you know, the idea of an android ball player and playing, you know, with those tropes. I mean, this is a good idea. It's charming, it's whimsical. It's probably better at a half hour than it would be at a Disney movie. Having said that, you know, the heart thing just seems like, you know, why are you going this direction? And then the idea that the league says, oh yeah, just put an artificial heart in him. Where did they get this biological heart that they're, you know, what hobo did they murder? And
it's not a biological heart, is it? It's not. He actually said it's
robotic.
The professor says it's a robotic heart, because and this is the only.
Just shove some tissue paper in there and just paint it red. I mean,
it's a heartbeat. The thing that they determine it that make, and this is there were two parts of this which was interesting, and I say interesting as in like it's interesting to think about more than it's interesting to see. Is this weird sort of like requirement for players to be human? And it's like, you know, a team is made up of 9 men, not robots, whatever. It's like, okay, well, are you going to then explore what it is to be human? Are we going to have some sort of like pre-Blade Runner thing about? No, we're just going to give them a heart. You know, we're going to lean into Wizard of Oz rather than anything robotics. And again, like no one at any point goes like, this level of robotics is fucking impressive. Like this is real. Like, you know, the military should turn up and all kinds of stuff. But no, they're just willing to let him play baseball. And I know it's whimsical. I know it's supposed to be silly. But it is such a sort of like they introduced this issue, this bump of not having a heart, like being outed as a robot, and then it is resolved so easily where the professor's like, oh yeah, not a problem. Yeah, I could knock up a heart now. Yeah, it'll be on the field if you're happy with that, you know, we can go with that. And he's like, yeah, I can't find an argument for that, you know. Right. What about sentience? Or, you know, what is it to be human? Are we going to have this argument and this discussion? Is Casey human? What do you mean by that? It never gets past that, and then you get the bit that I hate the most, is that, well, he's got a heart now, he's got compassion, and you're just like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a version of that sort of working, but they don't play it up, right? Like, I mean, it's absurd that what defines you as a human is not just having a heart, but also the organ of a heart. I mean, which is so oddly specific. But then, I mean, there's a version of him, like, let's say you just shove tissue paper into a chest cavity and put a motor on it, right? And the version of him finding out that he has emotions and not being able to do his job anymore, because you never are given any interior space for Casey. He's not the main character, the coach is. And so seeing Casey sort of struggling with the ball in his hand, not able to do this anymore, and that this is all psychological because the heart isn't doing anything, could be interesting. There's a version of that I'd be interested in, right? Not necessarily buy, but be interested in. This has no interest in doing that. It's just a twist, right? It's just, I mean, it's an idea. And there are good ideas here. They just don't work besides, an entertaining divertissement for, 20 minutes.
Yeah. And like you say, it works. It made me chuckle a couple of times, in that sort of, in the same way that like comedies of this era do, in that sort of like, it's not really funny, but it's sort of like you said, the whimsical is. I'm happy with the whimsy. The thing is like at the end of it, when he says like he's got compassion, and the professor makes this sort of or provides his explanation. He's like, well, he's young. He's only had compassion for like 3 days. And I'm thinking, yeah, then program him to deal with it. That's your job. You've just created him. And then they say, oh, we're thinking it'd be better in social care. And I'm thinking, no, having compassion is one part, but you need to be sort of able to make really tough decisions about things in people's lives, about children, people in abusive relationships. Like, you have to deal with some really hard stuff. He's not the person to be doing this. Like, it's basically who can give Casey the biggest sob story will end up being the problem. Yes, again, it's one of those where the twist is there, you say, for entertainment, but it ends up. I'm seeing this more. We'll cover this when we do the season wrap up. Is the twist and the ending is so sort of like squidgy and loose that it goes. It's almost like a boom. Oh, you can leave it at that, and it sort of it never feels fully thought out beyond the twist.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's there to just have a twist. I mean, it's one of these episodes where you say, okay, that's a twist.
Yeah.
It's not M. Night Shyamalan. I mean, there's poetry here. I do like him leaving to become a social worker. You're right; it doesn't really make sense, but I mean, I like the idea of I've invented these robots. We're gonna prove them as a baseball player. But I don't really know what they're good for yet. I haven't figured out how to market them. No concern about money. I mean, yeah, what I would say is this is just one of those episodes where things happen. And those things are interesting. They're choices you can make as a writer. None of them feel inevitable. None of them feel like they all work together as a single unit. Is it interesting? Yes. Is it diverting? Yes. I mean, for TV that's never supposed to be seen again, that's pretty good.
No, that's a very good point. This obviously wasn't designed for the level of analysis that we often give it. But no, it is good. I won't lie. Like, it entertains me. Like you say, this feels that there's a lot of ideas and a lot going on for a very short episode. So I enjoy it, and I enjoy it as a piece of entertainment. But that ending, it's the reason I hate the Wizard of Oz. In this thing of like the initial concept for the Tin Man is like, I wish I had a heart, and I wish I had a brain. It's like, and I know again that's going back another sort of 50, 60 years before this, and so and I know it's like an allegory and things, but it's these things of sort of like boiling them down to an organ. It never sort of even as a kid I was almost like, well, that's just stupid. Like it didn't work. So I've always struggled with these ideas of like, well, he has a heart now, so that's not how emotions work. That's not how we work.
Yeah, but again, there's a version of this where that works in the script, right? Where the heart doesn't do anything, but Casey sort of knowing have a heart and what this means culturally enough to answer questions and stuff and interact, finds he is, he always had just like Wizard of Oz, he always had the ability to empathize. He just never used it. Now he's struggling. There's a version of this, but now you're getting into sort of Blade Runner territory where Casey is the main character. His plight becomes the main thing. And I think we've seen in several episodes that while these episodes, especially the robot episodes, often approach those sort of themes and come close to that, they never really take the robot's point of view.
No.
That's got to wait for another 50 years.
Yes. No, I agree. But and that version you've just said is the version I want to see. I think there's a really good episode where you get that sort of cultural identification of having a heart means this, and it's then him identifying or finding how to have compassion. That I would watch. That I'd watch the shit out of that. That sounds amazing. But yeah, I do think there's it's still fun.
Yeah, and all you need to give him the heart, you don't need this. I've found out. It's like,
Yeah.
well, he's gonna have to have a physical examination. Throw a heart into him quick, buddy. Like, okay, I mean, and then you can avoid this whole like National League kind of, breaking the rules, making a team of. I mean, yeah, but that's a different,
a different episode. Anyway, any final thoughts?
Nope, I'm good.
Excellent. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on The Mighty Casey, and we shall talk to you on the next episode.